Hello and welcome to the Producer Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Versman, and with me today is Scott Peterson. Scott is a Minnesota-based producer who has worked on a number of feature films over the years. Today we're excited to talk to him about his most recent film, Treasure Lies. Let's get started. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hey, thank you, Micah.
To start, I thought maybe if you want to give just kind of a brief overview of how you got into filmmaking.
Sure. I started writing as a hobby. In fact, the Treasure Lies is the first movie I ever wrote. I had the idea ages ago in 1999, and I kind of was thinking, hey, this would make a great movie kind of thing. And there's some plot twists in there, and I thought, hey, that's kind of a catchy thing. And so I thought about it, and I didn't really do anything about it. And I was at a Barnes & Noble bookstore, and I was in the line, and as I was leaving, I noticed in the bargain bin they had a book called The Screenwriter's Bible. And so I bought that. It was only $1. And I was like, oh, perfect. This is a sign that I should write this movie. So I started, I read how to format and all that stuff, and wrote my first movie, and just started going from there. And I've probably written 15 or so scripts. And, but when I got married, my wife read The Current, and she said, we should make this into a movie. And we were kind of inspired by the Kendrick brothers that did, Fireproof, Ace and the Giants and all those. But we had seen one called Flywheel, their first movie. And they did it on a budget of like $27,000, I think it was. And they used lights that they bought from Home Depot. And I was just like, okay, that we can do. We looked into producing our movie ourselves, and nothing fell into place. Roadblock, doors closed. So we're like, okay, God doesn't want us to make movies. So 6 months later, we're at a vision dinner that our pastor put on, and he asked the congregation, when was the last time for Christ you tried something utterly and laughably impossible? And my wife hits me on the shoulder, and she goes, he's talking about your movie, right? And from that moment on, we consider ourselves, quote unquote, movie producers. And we dove in, and doors that had been closed were open. I got an email a week before that vision dinner from the Boy Scout camp that said, hey, I thought you were going to use our camp for a movie. And I thought they had said no because they didn't respond, And so all these doors were open, and we're like, it was all in God's timing now. And it all worked out. That the vision dinner was in November. And by April, we were casting, and we were filming in July. So everything fell into place.
That's cool, for sure. I've had some of those moments on projects where, yeah, this is totally God saying, go this route.
It's nice to get those affirmations.
Yes. It sounds like from the beginning, you've always kind of been filling that producer position. Why has that been your interest or area of work? Because a lot of people you meet, they always want to be the director or the DP or these other roles. You never hear a lot about people wanting to be producers.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know even that I want to be. Just that I think what I enjoy the most is the writing. I love writing it, and then later on watching it come to life on screen. But nobody else was really willing to do it. We couldn't find. I actually went to like 3 pitch fests in Hollywood, pitching my movies, and none of them were willing to do it. And like I said, we were encouraged by the Kendrick brothers, and we're like, okay, they produced their own movie, we can do this. And so we just kind of dove in. I actually do enjoy it, but the most enjoyable thing I think is the writing. But the actual process, the production part, I have learned to enjoy.
Yeah.
Well, the first time around, when you don't know what you're doing, it gets really, and I don't even necessarily know what I'm doing now, but I'm just doing what needs to be done, putting out the fires that pop up, and it's like whack-a-mole.
I've never heard it put that way, but that can so be true. So since you write scripts as well, have you found writing and then also being kind of that producer makes it easier or more challenging?
A little more challenging because there's ways that I have envisioned a line being presented since the day I wrote it. And I feel almost like I'm kind of a bother on the set because I want to listen to the actor go through their lines with the director so I can say, oh, wait a minute, this is the way I envision this, kind of thing. Like there's a scene where we were filming in Treasure Lies where the character is Tim, and he delivers the line, you start a fight, you hit him, and then I'll yell, fight! And then Mr. Hoffman will come out and break up the fight. And the line was just being delivered as, and I'll yell fight, but I wanted it to be, and I'll yell fight! And so luckily I was on set at that point. And again, it's not, the director didn't know that's the way I wanted it delivered, because it's not, you can't write emphasis like that in the script. You're not allowed to bold things, that type of thing, or do it all in all caps.
So before we jump into Treasure Lies more specifically, one other question I had is, because feature films are a lot of work, so how do you balance getting what needs to be done for the film with your family life?
This actually, the last movie worked out really, really well, but not as well as I would like it to. My daughter lives in Oklahoma, so Oklahoma has got a 35% rebate. So I'm like, okay, we're packing up and we're moving the production company down there to film. And I got to see her and the grandkids and my son-in-law for a bit during the pre-production, but then once production rolled around, it became difficult to see them. Even on weekends or days off, when we weren't filming, I still had to take the motorhome in and get tons of supplies, the food and the water and all that stuff from Costco and all that stuff, whereas I would rather have had more time to spend with the grandkids. But we were able to squeeze a lot of time in there, but not as much as I had anticipated. My wife, she's an attorney, and she needed to stay working for quite a bit of that time during production. But there was like 2 weeks of the 4 weeks that we filmed, she was able to come down and be on set, which was awesome.
Nice. Since Treasure Lies wasn't your first feature film, was there anything you had learned on the prior films that you were planning to apply to how you ran the set or did pre-production or anything like that for Treasure Lies?
Boy, yeah, there's as you go through the process, you work with certain people that you like go, oh, that's a person I can't imagine making a movie without. And we discovered Allison Weber.
Okay.
She's a production manager on Miles Between Us, our second movie. And we're like, okay, we got to make sure we get Allison on the next one. So she was a rock solid person on the set, and she was amazing. And again, I can't imagine doing another movie without her. So you learn who you want to have around and make sure that you get them on the next movie. There are things that as you go along, you realize that different ways you can squeeze more scenes in one day, by combining locations, things like that, that you learn in the first movie. We were able to do that quite a bit in Treasure Lies, making one scene work for, one set work for a different scene, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I've done that before for sure.
Like we used, there's a scene that in Treasure Lies where Sean goes into the office of the manager and he looks at the surveillance tape, and we weren't able to film in the office at the convenience store, so we were trying to figure out how to make it happen. How can we get back here? We weren't able to film the days that we were there. And so I came up with the idea, well, there's a garage when we filmed at the mansion, there's a garage that we could just push everything in a corner. And I called the prop master and the production designer, and I said, okay, can we get 2 filing cabinets and a door, just a plain door, throw that on top of the 2 filing cabinets, and then mock that up to make it look like an office. And she made that happen in a half a day. She just,
oh, wow.
I called her that morning, and I said, we're going to film this afternoon in this garage. Can you make it look like an office? And when you watch that, you have no idea that you're not in the convenience store office.
I definitely didn't notice when I watched the film. that was a garage.
Yeah. Yeah, that was Morgan Wooler. That was a production designer, and then Jonik Petrie.
Okay. So Treasure Lies, you had Brett Varvel as the director. What was that process like, finding him for the project and getting him on board?
At one point, we were going to film here in Minnesota, and we were looking for a local guy, and we kind of had narrowed it down to one, and it didn't work out. And again, this is another example of God's timing. The guy had just taken a job, and they told him when he got hired that they would give him a leave of absence to do film stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's like, sweet, let's do this. So he took the job, and then when we talked to him about directing our movie, hadn't committed, hadn't signed anything, but he contacted the employer and said, hey, I might be needing the time off from this to this. And they said, oh, well, your leave of absence stuff doesn't start for a year. And he's like, I have to wait a year for this, So we started looking around. And this was in March, and we were going to be filming in June. And so I'm like, uh-oh. And I went to Christian Worldview, and I had seen Brett Varvel talk at Christian Worldview a couple of years before, and it really impressed me. I was real impressed with him, and not only as a speaker, but as a Christian and a man. And I called my wife and I said, I think this is the guy that I want to direct the movie. And I, told her I was going to talk to him while I was down there in Tennessee at Christian Worldview. And I talked to him, and he asked me to send him the script. I sent it to him, and the week after Christian Worldview, he read it, and I said, the next week I'm doing casting. We're already casting, and so he's like, okay, let's do this. And he signed on, and I booked him a ticket, and he went down to Oklahoma with me, and we did the casting session down there. And then the next week he flew up to Minnesota, and we did a casting session up here in Minnesota, and it just all fell into place. So it's a matter of, like, when the first director didn't work out, it doesn't matter, because that God's got different plans, And maybe the plan is that you're not supposed to make the movie this year, like it happened with The Current. It was delayed one whole summer because the timing wasn't right. And in the case with Treasure Lies, God was saying, okay, that's not the director I want, and let's go this way. And it all worked out.
That is cool. Do you have any advice you would maybe give to somebody that's looking to bring a director on to a project they're producing?
I guess what I'd say is to look at the person, not only their body of work, but the person. With Brett, we just ended up with a real godly man who led the set in prayer. He led the set with energy, and he just was, he did a really, really good job for us. So I'd look at, like I said, not only their body of work, but the person.
Now that's some really good advice. So you mentioned casting a little bit. So what was your casting process like? Were you trying to mainly cast people local to where you were filming, or were you looking all over the place for the talent?
We kind of looked all over the place for talent, but with an emphasis on local because of the housing situation and things like that. But still, a lot of our cast came from all over the place. Yeah. But we did auditions in Oklahoma City. And then before that, we had everybody send in sides. We would send them, they would first send us a monologue, and then if we liked that, we would send them a side to read, and then they would send that to us, and we'd watch those. And those that we liked, then we'd invite to do an audition in person, either in Oklahoma or Minnesota, depending on where they were closest to. But it was kind of fun. We had like when we did the first movie, The Current, there was like five people on our panel. We had 2 real estate agents, a lawyer, but nobody in the business at all. A stay-at-home mom, nobody in the business. But good acting and bad acting when you see it,
Yes.
So we did that, and then we'd have, if we liked them, we'd have them do a off the cuff kind of thing. We'd say like, all right, you're in line at a store and you need to get to the front of the line. You have to talk your way past 10 people. Go, and then they start winging it, and it was kind of fun to see how they ad-libbed.
Nice, yeah. That's a good idea to have your people auditioning do some ad-lib type stuff just to see what they can do. So since you're based in Minnesota, but you were shooting in Oklahoma, what was your process for finding locations and some of that pre-production work? Did you go down there, or did you have people down there kind of scouting all that for you?
Did a little bit of both. I went down there a couple weeks before and did a bunch of location scouting. The hardest one to find was a convenience store, because we had to, most of them stay open 24 hours, and we needed one that would shut at night, and we would film over the night. And so we looked and we looked and we looked, and we had one. And then once we were down there, for some reason he backed out and then stopped returning my calls. So we're kind of panicking, because we're filming in like, a week kind of thing. And we ended up finding one, obviously, and we found the right one. It was just perfect. It was a lot closer than we were to our home base. The guy was super nice, and yeah, it worked out great. But then the other thing is I would put on Facebook different locations that we're looking for. We're looking for this, looking for that. And people give us suggestions, like for a lawyer's office, for the father of the daughter in the movie. We needed a really nice, fancy office. And so we ended up finding one. That one came from my son-in-law. He saw that what we were looking for, and he's like, well, come look at our place.
Nice. Was there a lot of like pre-production then that you did in Oklahoma ahead of time, or did everybody pretty much show up and within a couple of days you were shooting?
A lot of the people came in, maybe 3 weeks before, and we did during those 3 weeks. We would go to each of the locations and figure out where we're going to shoot from, the angles and things like that. And then the last week, once the full crew came in, we took the camera department basically out to each of the locations so they could get an idea where we're going to park the truck, where we're going to move the stuff through, angles we're going to shoot, things like that.
Cool. Because you shot this during the summer, and people, if they're not in the Midwest, they might not know, but summer in Oklahoma is usually bad weather time of the year. So did that cause any trouble either with filming or with safety?
Yeah, they're right in the middle of Tornado Alley, so we were kind of concerned about that. But when we scheduled the shoot, it was supposed to be outside of tornado season, so we were kind of safe there. But the 3 weeks that we did the pre-production stuff, some of that was at the end of their tornado season. And we ended up, there was once where we actually went over to my daughter's house to possibly go into her shelter. They only had room in their shelter for one of us, and the other 3 had to go to a neighbor's house, and the neighbor said it was okay, had it all approved and ready to go if need be. But we never had to do that. We were all ready to go, that as soon as we see this on the map, it's coming our way, we're going to head over to the neighbors. So ended up not having to do that. And then there was one other day where I think we had like 12 or 10 to 12 at that time apartments. We rented 2-bedroom apartments, and we're all in the same complex. And there was a tornado like bearing down on us, and we're like kind of panicking. And they said on the news that you're supposed to go to the lowest level in the home and to go into a room that doesn't have windows. And the production office was the only one that was on the first level. All the other ones were upper levels. And so we sent out a text message, everybody come over to the production office, and we're all sitting there watching the radar. We had one guy that was like a weather nerd, and I'm sure he would like that phrase, but he was a weather nerd, and he was just like watching the weather, and he's like, okay, it's going to go over here, and he knew about how it was going to hook and everything. And so we just were watching Ben and saying, okay, Ben, do we go in the closet yet? And he's like, nope, we're good. But we were all kind of panicking there for just a little bit. But other than that, we had rain one day that delayed us for like an hour and a half maybe, and that's it. We had threats of rain. That there was days that it was supposed to be like 60 to 100% chance of rain, and we got nothing, and it was just amazing. My wife set up a Facebook page of people, of prayer warriors that would just like, okay, here's what we need now, and she put on there that we need the rain to stay away, and they all prayed it away, and we ended up, like I said, only that one day with a 2 hour hour and a half delay. So.
That's impressive. I've been on shoots that haven't been that lucky.
The other thing we got a lot of hot. It was really hot.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the scenes in the film, the lead character is heading home from work and he gets caught in a rainstorm. How did you go about creating that rainstorm on set?
We just filmed that the day that it rained. No, I'm just kidding. All right, we had it all set up. In the script, it was supposed to be the dad sees him driving home, and he picks him up, throws his bike in, and gives him a ride home, and they talk as they're driving on the way home. And so I got a guy that I talked to that had a rain machine down in Oklahoma, and told him what we wanted, and he came and looked at our situation, and he was kind enough to say, this isn't going to work for you guys, because what I wanted him to do was drive and then squirt the water up in the air, and we would drive through it, and we would follow him basically. And he's just like, it's not going to work. And so he was kind enough to tell us that one thing it wasn't going to work, and then the other thing, we couldn't afford him. So he said, contact the fire department. So I picked up the phone and I called, and I talked to the fire chief, and I said, here's what we want. We're wondering if you could squirt some water in the air. And I rewrote the script so the dad picked him up, and the car wouldn't start. And so the reason the car doesn't start is because we couldn't drive it. So the dad starts turning the engine over, and it's not starting. So they have the conversation sitting there in the rain without driving. And so I told the fire chief that, and he's like, that sounds like something we could do. I'm like, really? Sweet. It was just, he just agreed to it in the first sentence, and that's it.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is amazing. I love this town. Yukon, Oklahoma was very, very kind to us. They were open to a lot of stuff. The lawyer's office didn't have matching chairs, but I remember when we were at the Chamber of Commerce office, and Pam Shelton, she's the chamber president, she's talking to us, and I remember that their conference room had all these really nice matching chairs. So I called her and said, hey, can we borrow your chairs? And she's like, sure. It's like, really?
I was really impressed both with the church scenes and then the prom scenes of how full you were able to make those scenes look. Were you actually able to get that many extras, or was that more just like creative camera work?
No, we had tons of extras. Yeah. At the church scene was kind of creative camera work. We didn't really have as many as it looks like we did. It's just showing slices of the congregation and things like that. We probably only had on the main floor a third of it filled, but it looks like it's full. And then same with the wrestling match. We only showed the audience on the one side of the gym. And then the same with the prom. We showed the wide shot, the opening shot where we come out over the top of the balcony. That one shows only like half the floor, but I was impressed that we had enough for half the floor. And sadly, that was really the only prom that they had that year, because they ended up canceling the whole school year. So they all got to go to our prom. Yeah.
With the prom scenes, did wardrobe find all those costumes, or were a lot of those costumes that the extras owned?
Well, what it was is a couple of things. a lot of people the guys would wear suits, and then the girls all brought old prom dresses, and so they would wear their prom dresses. We asked them to bring a couple, so that we made sure that we'd choose the more modest of the two. And then the other thing is the guys that did not have tuxedos or bow ties or whatever, we contacted a company that was kind enough to send us their tuxedos that they're going to discard. So they had been worn like 40, 100 times or however many times is their max that they're done with them. So they decided they what they normally do is just throw them away. And we said, before you throw them away, can you send them to us and then we'll use them and then just throw them away? And they said, sure, but we want you to mail them back to us and then we'll throw them away. I'm like, all right. So sounds good. They loaned us 30 tuxedos, I think it was. They sent a box of ties, 30 tuxedos. We had people just bring their white shirts, and then we gave them a bow tie. And like I said, we had 30 tuxedos available in various sizes for different people. So the wardrobe was crazy that day, trying to
I bet.
make sure everybody had a tie and a tux that matched and everything. And that was Rebecca Peterson. She did a great job not pulling her hair out that day.
In the film, you have a number of licensed songs. What was that process like? I've never licensed music before for production. So like finding and then getting permission.
If you go through our three movies, the current, Miles Between Us, and Treasure Lies, each of them, the songs are like perfect for the spot in the movie. I mean, it feels almost like it's a musical because the song says exactly what the mood is in the movie. And so what I start out early and I start looking for songs and I compile a list of what I'll do is I go on to Amazon and I search for new Christian artists not new artists, but new songs within the last 30 days. And I look at them and I start listening to them. And then every like a week later, I'll go on there and listen to more new ones. And I keep a list of ones that I like the sound of the song, but I don't know that it's going to work in the movie, but I like the sound of the song. And so I keep a list and the list just becomes huge. And as the movie develops in post-production, I'm like, okay, this is where this one is supposed to be. And I start narrowing it down and I'm putting them in the spots. And they just, like I said, they just fall into place. In fact, one of the songs, in the song, he talks about he's working so hard, working 9 to 5, and weekends, night shifts, and overtime. And then he says his own name in the song. The guy that wrote it, or the singer, his name is Sean, and the name of our lead character is Sean. So it's like, wow! It's like when you listen to it, it's like, was that song written for the movie? No, it wasn't, but it's perfect in that spot. Yeah. Yeah,
that's cool. How did you then get permission from the artist to use the song?
The group that loaned us those that song that I mentioned with the name Sean in it is a group called Manic Drive, and they have 3 songs in the movie, and I'm so thankful to them for letting us use their songs in the movie. But I just contacted them. They're two brothers out of Canada. I found them on Facebook, contacted them, told them what we're doing. Told them about our other 2 movies. I'm not sure if they watched them or not, but so they at least actually saw that we have done this in the past and that we put out something that was worthy of them lending their songs to, their talents to, and contact them. And it just happened that they were going to be in Minnesota. Again, they're from Canada. They're going to be in Minnesota like a week later, performing a gig. And I'm like, all right, we got to go to that. So my wife and I drove up an hour and a half to see them, and we're super impressed with them. They're playing this small venue, but they were acting like it was an arena. I mean, just they played this amazing show. And afterwards we talked to them and we're like, any chance? And the next, like 2 days later, they committed to letting us use their music for the film.
That is neat. What was the post-production process like? Were you doing the editing, or was Brett editing, or did you have like somebody else doing that?
We had a really tight turnaround. So we only had one editor, and we had a really tight turnaround. But as his schedule kind of bogged down a little bit, we brought Brett in, and he edited for 2 weeks, and then basically then handed that off to Jeremy, who was the main editor. And then Jeremy put it all together, and then didn't necessarily, he kept a lot of the things that we had, that Brett had done, but Brett was basically doing it as a first pass. And then Jeremy basically then took control after that. But a lot of what Brett did stayed. I mean, he's an incredible editor as well. But then we did that, and then at the like I said, we had kind of a quick turnaround, so we were going really, really fast. We got it done, and then handed it off to everybody else: color, score, special effects. After that, and we had a 30-day turnaround after that. After he was done, after we got picture lock, we wanted it done 30 days after that. So everybody had to jump on it real quick.
Wow, yeah, that is a quick turnaround there. So I wanted to ask, because Treasure Lies was supposed to have some theatrical distribution this spring, and like every other movie, COVID-19 came in and changed plans. So how did you decide to go about the release of the film, and kind of what led to that decision?
Yeah, I'm just sick. We had it all planned out. I Still Believe was going into theaters, and they put up a huge marketing budget and for their movie to go into theaters, and we were going to go into theaters right after them with no marketing budget, but showing our trailer to all their audiences. So our trailer, while the I Still Believe audience was in theaters, they're going to watch our trailer, and then our movie is going to come out 4 weeks later. So we're hoping to ride that wave a little bit. And then also the trailer emphasized that we had Cameron Arnett, who was also in I Still Believe. And so we'd have that tie in. So we were all set. And then all of a sudden this whole COVID thing. In fact, we had our premiere March 5th in Oklahoma, and then barely got home when everything got shut down, so we're like, no. And so we called all the theaters, and I was kind of worried because we had committed to the theaters. I was kind of worried that I didn't know they're actually going to shut down. I thought they would stay open, but we just wouldn't have an audience. And we had committed to paying money for the theaters, but they were all kind enough to let us all back out of the contracts. So we really had nothing for theatrical. It was supposed to open April 24th and nothing. So we quickly contacted people trying to figure out how fast we can get the DVD done, and we were able to get it done by April 24th and release it then. And so it was released on like christiancinema.com, and it's on Amazon and all that, but with no momentum behind it, as we would have had. Yeah.
Have you seen a big effect then with not having that momentum, or has like word of mouth seemed to kept things pretty strong?
No, it really hasn't. Not as well as I would have liked. The only word of mouth really was the only buzz on it was within the area of Oklahoma City where we filmed. There was a huge buzz there. So we had a lot of sales down there and things like that. But the whole relying on the word of mouth really, really hurt things. With our first two movies, we were in, I think it was like 27 and 40 theaters, I think, with each of the different, I think those are the numbers. So we were able to get to a big audience, for us. I mean, that's huge. We're thrilled to be in 40 theaters, kind of thing. And when that didn't happen, there's like no momentum. So we're kind of starting from the ground, from from the starting line without having a rolling start.
Yeah, no, I feel you there. So I got just a couple more kind of wrap-up questions for you. So first, what's one thing you know now you wish you would have known back on like your first feature film?
The only thing I can really think of is that the cost involved in each of the different things. I had no idea. We set our budget initially on the first one at like 15,000, and I was going to edit it, and I did. I edited it the first time, and I had a 2-hour movie, and it's like we handed it over to a professional, and he got me a good 1.5-hour movie out of it, and but again, he charged, and so then we had to keep adding more and more to the budget, and so getting a more realistic idea of what things cost is where I'm at now. It's like the first time it like hits you in the face, and then you kind of like, okay, and then you kind of, it's a tough pill to swallow, but then you just keep moving on and figure out what you need to do for the next movie and how to raise the funds for it.
Yes. Are there any like books or podcasts or different things like that you've found really helpful in learning more about filmmaking?
Not really. The only one that really was super helpful for me is the Screenwriter's Bible. It's by a guy named Dave. I think it's Trottier, but it could be Trotter. I don't know. But I've always said Dave Trottier, and it's really, really good as far as it helps you learn the formatting, because people won't even look at your script if it's not formatted properly. But everybody that asks me about a good screenwriting book, that's the one. I've got probably 30 screenwriting books, and that's one I always recommend to people.
Okay. I've never checked that one out, but I might have to look into it.
Yeah, it's really good.
And so then final question, if you were to meet somebody that's just getting started in producing films, what would be one piece of advice you give them?
To look at all the there's a lot of things that people don't realize when they first get into it, is that you need to have your script. You need to get script. First of all, you need errors and omissions insurance, because if you don't want to get sued later on, but in order to get errors and omissions insurance, you have to have your script go through script clearance, and you have to have the title cleared. So, like, if the name of the character is Tim Jordan, I'll just make up a name, Tim Jordan, and you have him as a guy that cheats on his wife, and he's a real estate agent. Well, you're filming in a town that there's a guy named Tim Jordan that cheated on his wife and is a real estate agent. Oh, he's going to sue you. So the script clearance company goes through and says, okay, you need to change this guy's name. They say, okay, you have this name of the company is this name, but there is actually a company in Delaware by that name, so you need to change that name of that company. And so they give you all sorts of different things so you can avoid conflicts down the road.
Okay.
And as a screenwriter, I would not name the characters. If you can get by with just Tim, his name's Tim. You don't need a last name, that type of thing. So definitely look into the insurance aspect of what all you'll need to do, and the names you need to change so that nothing happens on the back end, and to budget for the insurance, and to budget for the script clearance, and budget for the title search.
Yeah, no, that's all really good stuff to know. I've looked into that, and I haven't reached that point yet of doing big budget stuff, so I haven't needed anything, but I know it's coming.
Yeah, it's pretty costly. It's a good part of the budget.
All right. So yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of the Producers Podcast. So thank you very much for coming on today, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Micah.
Until next time, make sure to subscribe to the Producer Podcast, and thanks for listening.